The last few embers of daylight had long since faded, swallowed by the vast, inky canvas of the rural night. Here, on this stretch of highway, far from the hurried pulse of city life, the gas station stood as a solitary beacon, its fluorescent glow casting a lonely, almost wistful light on the asphalt. It was quiet, as it always was after midnight. The only sounds the soft hum of the refrigerators inside and the distant murmur of the highway. I remember feeling a particular kind of solitude that night, a quiet ache that often settles in when the world seems to sleep. It was then that she appeared, seemingly from the very edges of the pooling darkness. She didn't walk so much as materialize, a figure emerging from the oppressive shadows beyond the reach of our brightest sign. My breath caught, just a little, a small ripple of unease disturbing the calm surface of the night. She was disheveled, her clothes, a dark, shapeless coat and something light beneath, seemed to cling to her in odd ways, as if recently dried after being thoroughly drenched. Her hair, long and dark, was matted, framing a face that was pale, almost translucent in the harsh station light. But it was her eyes that truly held me. They were wide, a deep, unsettling gray, reflecting the light with an intensity that felt too much. She shuffled closer, her movements slow, deliberate, like a puppet whose strings were being pulled by an unseen hand. I watched her from behind the counter, my hand resting, almost unconsciously, on the cool plastic of the credit card machine. There was no car, no bicycle, no sign of how she might have arrived at this isolated spot. The road, as far as I could see, was utterly empty. Could you help me?" Her voice was a fragile whisper, thin as spun glass, yet it carried an odd resonance, a hollow echo that seemed to cling to the air. I need a ride. Anywhere. Just away." A shiver traced a path down my spine, not from cold, but from something deeper, more primal. It wasn't just her appearance or the strangeness of her sudden arrival. It was the quality of her desperation, too profound for a simple request for a ride. It felt ancient, heavy with an unspoken burden. I wanted to help, a part of me always does. But another, quieter voice within me whispered caution, an instinctive drawing back from something undefined. I'm sorry," I managed, my own voice feeling surprisingly rough. "I can't leave the station, not at this hour. There's no one else here." I gestured vaguely towards the empty pumps, the silent highway. Is there anyone I can call for you?" Her gaze didn't waver, those unsettling gray eyes fixed on mine. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through her. She just stood there, suspended in the cool night air. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to fade. It wasn't a quick vanishing act, no puff of smoke or sudden leap into the darkness. It was a dissolution, like a photograph slowly losing its color, its edges blurring. First, her outline softened, then her form became transparent, until, in a blink, she was simply not there. The space where she had stood was empty, filled only with the faint, persistent hum of the gas pumps and the silent whisper of the wind. I walked out from behind the counter, my legs feeling strangely heavy, drawn by an invisible thread to the spot where she had been. The air there felt colder, distinctly so, like the lingering breath of winter in early spring. And then I saw it. Lying on the damp asphalt, just where her feet had been, was a single withered white rose. Its petals were bruised and browning at the edges, yet somehow still retained a fragile, ethereal beauty, out of place in the mundane setting. It felt impossible. She hadn't been carrying anything. I picked it up, the petals crumbling slightly beneath my trembling fingers. The rose held no scent, no lingering warmth, only that strange, pervasive cold. I stood there for a long time, the only living soul in a vast, silent landscape, holding that fragile bloom. Was she a memory, given fleeting form by the loneliness of the night? Or something more, a sorrowful echo from a past long gone? briefly reaching out for a connection. The logical part of me struggles for an explanation, something tangible to hold on to. But the heart, the part that feels the quiet ache of human longing, knows that some mysteries are meant to linger. Like a phantom whisper on the wind, leaving only a withered rose and an unsettling, beautiful question in their wake. The hum of the old building at night is a familiar drone, a dull, constant buzz that usually just fades into background noise. Most nights, it's just me, my mop, and the endless stretch of linoleum pushing through the silence. My joke's simple: clean the messes, make the place presentable for the next day's grind. But for the past month, this one particular stain, it's been a damn problem. It started subtle. 3rd floor, right by the old accounting department, where the lights always flicker like a bad omen. On the wall, just above the scuff mark where the old water cooler used to sit, a dark blotch. Not huge, maybe the size of my hand, but it was there. Looked like oil, thick and black, but with this weird reddish tint around the edges, almost like dried blood if you squinted. My gut tightened. This ain't a coffee spill. No one's drinking oil up here. First night I saw it, I figured someone dragged something heavy, something nasty, along the wall. Happened before. So, I grabbed my heavy-duty degreaser, the industrial stuff that strips paint if you leave it on too long. Sprayed it down, went at it with a stiff brush. Took some muscle, but it eventually came off. Left the drywall clean, a lighter patch where the grime had been. I stood back, wiped my brow with the back of my hand. Done. Another mess gone. Or so I thought. Next night, same route, same floor. And there it was. The stain. Right there. Perfect as hell. Like it'd been stenciled on. Same size. Same ugly black-red hue. Wet. Still tacky to the touch. My jaw clenched. No way. I stood there. Flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, casting long shadows. It wasn't seeping from a pipe, no watermark above it. It wasn't coming through the paint. It was just back. I hit it again, harder. Used pure bleach this time, sprayed it until the fumes made my eyes water. Scrubbed it until my arm ached. The paint on that spot was probably thinner than paper. I made damn sure it was gone. Took a photo with my phone. Just in case. Proof. My proof against whatever this was. But the next morning, when I checked, the picture on my phone was just a blur. And that night, the stain was back. Again. Exactly the same. It became a routine, a grim ritual. Every single night, that stain. Every single night me, battling it. I started trying different things. Scraped the wall with a putty knife. Nothing underneath. Sealed the drywall with a clear coat of lacquer after cleaning it. Stain went right over it, like the lacquer wasn't even there. I even tried setting up a small surveillance camera, one of those cheap motion-activated ones, pointed right at the spot. Woke up the next morning, pulled the card. Nothing. Just empty hallway. Then suddenly, the stain. No one walking by, no blur, no shadow. Just the stain appearing. It was like the building itself was bleeding. This wasn't just a stain anymore. This was a direct insult. A challenge. Something was leaving its mark, and it wasn't a pipe, wasn't a leak, wasn't some joker. This was persistent. Almost purposeful. I started sleeping less. My shoulders were always tight, my hands calloused from the scrubbing. Every night, the minute I stepped onto the 3rd floor, that familiar cold knot would twist in my stomach. I'd find myself looking over my shoulder, checking the empty hall, a stupid, useless reflex. I started thinking of it as the mark, and it felt like it was watching me, waiting for me to give up. I still clean it, every damn night. It comes back, I scrub it off. It's a Sisyphean task, the kind that breaks a man. But I won't break. This building, it's seen things, heard things. I know that, but it ain't gonna beat me with a damn stain. Maybe it wants me to lose my mind, to quit. Maybe it just wants to remind me it's here. I don't know its game and I don't care. What I do know is this: I'm still standing. My arms still work. And that stain? It might reappear, but it's still gone for now. And that's all that matters. It's not about winning, not anymore. It's just about not losing. And tonight, just like every other night, the wall is clean. For now. Oh, the night shift at Big Box Bargains. A true wonderland of consumer delights. Especially when it's just me, Leo, and the echoing silence of 1,000 empty shopping carts. Most folks think a grocery store after hours is just quiet, boring, even. But let me tell you, that's where the real magic happens. Or, the deeply peculiar stuff that makes you wonder if you accidentally drank the industrial-strength floor cleaner instead of your lukewarm coffee. It was about 2:17 a.m. last Tuesday, I think. I was happily stalking the cracker aisle, humming a slightly off-key rendition of a forgotten pop song. Everything was in its proper place, a veritable symphony of cardboard boxes. Wheat thins here, Triscuits there, all in a neat, orderly fashion. I remember because I have a bit of an organizational fetish when it comes to baked goods. Gives my life meaning, Anyway, I walked to the end of the aisle, grabbed my next pallet of dubious delights, and when I turned back, holy moly, the wheat thins were gone. Not like sold out gone. Like where the wheat thins had been, there were now 2 whole rows of organic kale chips. Kale chips in the cracker aisle. Now, I know my job, and I know for a fact the kale chips live 3 aisles over, next to the artisanal tofu-based frozen desserts. My brain did a little stutter step. Had I transcended? Was this a sudden, terrifying onset of shelf blindness? I chuckled nervously. Gravy, I mumbled to the empty aisle. You're losing your marbles, Leo. I put the kale chips back where they belonged, muttered a stern warning to the cracker shelf about respecting boundaries, and carried on. But then, it kept happening. Not every night, which was almost more unsettling, like a particularly mischievous poltergeist was on a strange, intermittent schedule. One night, I swear to all that is cardboard, the cereal aisle felt like it had stretched an extra 10 feet. I'd walk down, placing the Cheerios and Frosted Flakes with diligent precision. And when I looked back, the end of the aisle seemed a mile away. My cart, usually a faithful companion, felt like it was just dragging its feet through molasses. My internal GPS, which usually has aisle 7 breakfast chaos locked in, was definitely on the fritz. I actually checked my pedometer. No, I hadn't suddenly grown extra long legs, and the store hadn't magically expanded. It was just longer. It was like the very fabric of retail space was having a little stretch and yawn. Another time, I was stocking produce, admiring the perfectly stacked pyramids of apples, and I turned to grab a bin of organic avocados. When I spun back, the apple pyramid was gone, replaced by a truly magnificent shimmering display of canned tuna. Canned tuna, people. In the produce section, my eye twitched. All right, you elusive little gremlins of grocery, I whispered, waving my gloved hand at the empty air. I see you. This is a very specific, almost performance art level of mischief. I started keeping a mental map, a very serious, top-secret mental map of the store's actual layout versus its occasional baffling whims. I even started leaving little breadcrumbs, well, not literal breadcrumbs, because that's unsanitary. More like strategically placed post-it notes with silly doodles on them. My thought was, if the post-it notes vanished or reappeared somewhere weird, then I'd know for sure it wasn't just my imagination doing the cha-cha. But they always stayed put. Which, honestly, made the shifting aisles even more perplexing. Was it just the products? The shelves themselves? Was I cursed with the vision of a wonky dimension? I even considered talking to Brenda from day shift, but then I pictured her face. Her eyes narrowing as I tried to explain the sentient wheat thins, and I quickly decided against it. Some mysteries are best kept between a man, his mob, and the retail spirits who clearly have too much time on their hands. So now, when an aisle seems to stretch on into infinity, or a box of artisanal cheese puffs suddenly appears where the cat food used to be, I just sigh, adjust my cap, and get to work. It's a strange dance, this night shift. A perpetual game of hide and seek with the very architecture of the store. Maybe it's the store's way of keeping me on my toes, a little cosmic joke to break up the monotony. Whatever it is, it certainly makes for an interesting shift. And honestly, it gives me something truly unique to talk about. Though, I probably won't. Nobody would believe me anyway. Alright, so picture this. I'm pulling another night shift at the call center. You know, the usual, just me and the hum of 1,000 empty computers, and the glow of my screen reflecting off the darkened cubicles. It's usually chill, just waiting for the rare late-night inquiry, maybe catching up on some YouTube. But last night was nuts. I was just about to dive into another mindless cat video when my internal line, the one that never rings unless someone from IT is messing with something, suddenly lights up, like full-on flashing bright red. My heart actually did a little thump. I mean, who's calling me at 2 a.m.? Everyone's gone. I picked it up, kinda slow, like bracing for a prank or something. "Hello?" I said, trying to sound professional, but feeling totally weirded out. Nothing. Just dead air. Not even a dial tone, just silence. Like, the kind of silence that's too quiet. I figured, okay, whatever. Probably just a glitch in the ancient phone system. We're always having issues with this old tech. I hung up. Then it rang again. Less than 5 minutes later. Same line. This time, when I answered, there was this super faint, crackly static. Like old radio static, but super low. Barely there. I cranked the volume on my headset, practically pressing it into my ear. "Hello?" I practically shouted. Still nothing clear. Just that weird hiss. And then, I swear to God, I heard it. A whisper. Super faint, like someone was talking into a tin can from a mile away. It was distorted, totally garbled, but it was there. And then, click, it disconnected. Just like that. At this point, I'm freaking out a little. My palms are sweating. This isn't just a glitch. This feels targeted. My mind's racing, trying to figure out who'd be messing with me. A coworker, maybe? But why? And how? No one else is here. It rang a third time. I practically snatched the receiver off the hook. This time, the static was louder, and there was a definite rhythm to it, almost like breathing. And then, just for a split second, I heard a voice. It was deep, gravelly, and it sounded angry. It wasn't words, not really, more like a growl, a guttural sound that just vibrated through my skull. My gut just twisted into knots. I swear I felt a cold spot right behind me, like someone was standing there, breathing down my neck. I just ripped the headset off, my hand shaking. I couldn't handle it. I just sat there, staring at the phone, waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. Thank God. But that was just the start of my obsessive deep dive. I couldn't let it go. My shift was basically ruined. I spent the next hour messing with the internal system, pulling up call logs. Yeah, I know, probably a bad idea, but I had to know. And what I found? It didn't make any sense. All the calls were coming from one specific extension, IXT 412. And IXT 412? That's in cubicle D7. That cubicle has been empty for like 2 years. Dusty as hell. Chairs piled up. Nobody sits there. Nobody has for ages. I even walked over there, my flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Just an empty desk, a disconnected phone, dust motes dancing in the beam. No power, no nothing. So how in the hell was that phone ringing my line? I barely slept when I got home. Every creak of the floorboards, every little whistle of the wind outside made me jump. It's like that voice, that static, is still echoing in my head. Was it some old tech shorting out? Or was it something else? Something trying to reach out from that empty cubicle? Oh, my brain hurts just thinking about it. I've got another shift tonight, and honestly, I'm already dreading it. I just hope that damn phone stays quiet. I really, really do. The hum of the fluorescent lights in the main security office was a familiar, almost comforting drone against the profound silence of the late shift. It was Tuesday, just past 2 a.m, and I was on my third night guarding Sector Gamma, the old surgical wing, long since decommissioned. It was supposed to be the quietest post, a routine patrol through empty corridors, checking locked doors, ensuring no pipes had burst. No errant dust bunnies had spontaneously combusted. A simple enough task for a mind that appreciated order. Yet something was off. It began subtly, as these things often do. On my initial night, I dismissed it as fatigue, or perhaps the notorious draft that always seemed to snake through the older sections of the building. A prickling sensation at the back of my neck, the distinct feeling of eyes on me, even as I scanned the deserted hallway with my flashlight beam. I paused, the beam cutting through the gloom, illuminating peeling paint on the walls and the faint outlines of where medical equipment once stood. Nothing. The infrared display on my handheld monitor, linked to the wing's limited network of static cameras, showed only the empty stretch of corridor ahead, then behind. A trick of the mind, I concluded. The product of too much coffee and the inherent solitude of the graveyard shift. By the second night, the feeling had intensified, sharpened into something more pointed, less easily dismissed. I found myself checking my 6 o'clock more frequently, the unease a cold knot in my stomach. I recall specifically passing room 317, a former recovery room, I'd been told. As I walked past, the air just outside its closed door seemed to drop several degrees, a sudden, localized chill that raised goosebumps on my arms, despite the regulated building temperature. I stopped, my breath misting faintly in the frigid pocket of air. My rational mind immediately sought explanation. A faulty ventilation duct, perhaps a broken window somewhere high above. But a quick sweep of the thermal imager showed no such irregularities. The internal temperature of the room was stable, even warm. It was only outside the door. I noted the discrepancy, filing it away as an interesting, if inexplicable, data point. Then came the sounds. A faint scraping, like something being dragged across a linoleum floor, from somewhere deeper within the wing, around the bend of the corridor where the old X-ray labs used to be. My hand went to my sidearm, a conditioned reflex, a professional response to an unexpected auditory input in a secure zone. I moved cautiously, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the silence. The cameras, as always, showed nothing. My handheld displayed only empty rooms, deserted hallways. When I reached the corner, the sound ceased. There was nothing out of place. No fresh scuff marks on the floor. No disturbed dust motes floating in the air. It was as if the sound had been fabricated, a phantom of the air itself. Last night, the third night, it became undeniable. The feeling of being watched was constant, a pervasive hum beneath the surface of my consciousness. It wasn't just a sensation anymore. It was an active presence, a weight in the air just behind my shoulder. As I performed my checks in the old nurse's station, I noticed it. A supply cart, the kind used to ferry linens and medicines, typically stored against the far wall, was now angled slightly. Its front wheels turned inward, as if someone had just pushed it away from the counter. It was a subtle shift, perhaps only a foot or so, but it was enough. I distinctly remembered checking that cart earlier in my shift, confirming its position against the wall. I always do. It was a point of order. My pulse quickened, a steady thrum against my ribs. I accessed the camera feed for the nurse's station on my handheld. The timestamp confirmed I had just walked through that area. The camera showed only me, moving from one side of the room to the other, then exiting. There was no one else. No shadowy figure, no fleeting movement. Just me, a solitary figure in an empty space. Yet, the cart. I paced the perimeter again, a more deliberate, almost desperate search for a rational explanation. A faulty locking wheel? A subtle tremor in the building? I examined the cart meticulously. The wheels were locked. The floor was level. There was no conceivable way it could have moved on its own. The culmination came as I prepared to leave Sector Gamma for my scheduled break. As I approached the main access door, the sensation of being followed intensified to an almost unbearable degree. It was directly behind me, a cold, focused energy. I spun around, flashlight sweeping the empty corridor in a frantic arc. My eyes strained, searching for a shadow, a glint of reflective surface, anything that could explain the profound certainty of another presence. Nothing. Just the empty hallway, stretching into the dimness. I stood there for a long moment, my breath shallow, the adrenaline surging. It was irrational, I knew. Every single piece of verifiable data, the camera feeds, the thermal readings, the undisturbed dust, screen empty. Yet, the experience of being actively observed, of feeling the distinct chill and hearing the inexplicable sounds, was equally, powerfully real. I've logged the anomalies, of course, in the incident report, couching them in objective terms. Localized temperature drop, unconfirmed source, auditory hallucination suspected, minor displacement of equipment, no evidence of ingress. My supervisor, a man who values practicalities, will likely attribute it to stress, perhaps even suggest a vacation. But the question remains a persistent itch in my analytical mind. What is it? Is it merely the human mind, left to its own devices in an environment steeped in historical suffering, conjuring specters from the mundane? Or is there something else, something that defies the parameters of our known detection methods? An unseen observer that exists just beyond the reach of our sensors, content to merely watch. The logical part of me demands a quantifiable explanation. The part that walked through that wing last night, it feels a disquieting weight, a quiet certainty that the silence isn't as empty as it seems. And that, more than any chill or phantom sound, is the most unsettling observation of all.